If one commits the act of sodomy with a cow and you, or a camel, their urine and their excrements become impure, and even their milk may no longer be consumed. The animal must then be killed, and as quickly as possible, and burned. The Ayatollah Khomeini. I may never live that one down.
From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where you have my word, the next despotism is going to be way better than the last despotism. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radio. So glad you could join us tonight. And if you've been paying attention to the goings-on in the world over the past 48 hours or so, you may have noticed that the Iranian regime seems to be possibly on the verge of being popularly overthrown, and who knows? It could all be a false alarm. We've heard this song on the radio before, after all. In fact, it seems to play at least twice per decade. We think the mullahs and the Ayatollah are about to be toppled, and then they don't get toppled. And then we go back and play out the same old tired pantomime for the 10th or the 15th or the 20th time, the one with all the nuclear testing and the economic sanctions and the bellicose threats against the great Satan. That's us, by the way. But you don't need me to tell you how the song goes. In fact, you've heard it so many times by now, it might as well be the bastard love child of Hey Jude and Hotel California. And now goddamn Don Henley's probably going to copyright claim this video. It wouldn't be the first time. But that's not important now. The important thing is I had a rough night and I hate the fucking Eagles, man. Right, that's actually not the important thing. The important thing is that, as you know, my penchant as an amateur historian, the vineyard in which I tend to do my most useful toiling, is the one where I hold up a lens to some current day event and in my own inimitable way explain to you, the audience, that all events in the present day are in fact the culmination of a long series of other previous events that transpired in years and decades and centuries past. Here in the United States of America, we're celebrating the 250th anniversary of our founding this year, and we have only had two systems of government in all of the intervening years, which includes the Articles of Confederation, and those didn't even survive 10 years because they sucked. But in some parts of the world, and here we swing back to Iran or Persia, take your pick what you want to call it, most forms of governance never survive 1 century. And when one despotism passes away, it is invariably supplanted by a different despotism, which is often quite a bit worse than the last one. So tonight, ladies and gentlemen, with your kind permission, I'd like to frame the current Iranian unrest within the long-term context of Iran/Persia, over the course of the past half a millennium or so, which is to say, let's climb into the time-traveling DeLorean of our minds and let's go on a guided tour from Safavid Iran to Afsharid Iran to Zand Iran to Qajar Iran to the Constitutional Revolution of 1905 to Pahlavi Iran, the Anglo-Soviet invasion of 1943, the Islamic Revolution of 1979, and all of the associated blunders of a certain former Georgia peanut farmer who shall, for the moment, remain nameless. We begin in Safavid Iran, 1501 to 1736, how a state invents a religion and then becomes its prisoner. Safavid Iran becomes not as a state, but as a cult with an army. In 1501, a teenage warlord named Ismail Safavi rides into Tabriz, crowns himself Shah, and announces with all the subtlety of a hammer striking a skull that Persia is now officially 12 Shia Islam, full stop, no appeals, no opt-outs, no refunds. It's not because the population asked for it. They didn't. Persia had been comfortably Sunni for centuries, but Ismail needs something stronger than lineage or bureaucracy to glue together a post-fractured landscape, and religion fits the bill nicely, especially when it is paired with forced conversions and mass executions. Thus, Shiism becomes not just a faith, but a state identity enforced at sword point. And to be fair, it works for a while. The Safavids succeed in reuniting Iran as a coherent political entity for the first time since antiquity. They centralize authority, they foster Persian art, architecture, administration. They turn Iran into a recognizable, durable thing again. But here's the catch. Once you fuse religious legitimacy to political authority, you have welded your throne to a theological rail. Every future failure is no longer just bad governments, it is heresy. Every rival isn't merely a pretender, he is an enemy of God. Worse still, the Safavids import Shia clerics from abroad because Iran doesn't have enough of those yet. These clerics, they build an independent power base, accumulate land, influence, moral authority. They become a parallel state inside the state. The Shah may rule by divine favor, but the clergy increasingly claim they interpret that favor. By the late Safavid period, the dynasty is calcified. Court intrigue replaces competence. The military rots. The clerical class grows more assertive. And when Afghan tribesmen sack Isfahan in 1722, the empire collapses not with a bang, but with kind of an embarrassed wheeze. The lesson that Safavid Iran teaches, and one Iran will never quite unlearn, is this. If you build legitimacy on sacred ground, you will eventually lose the right to move. The state survives, but the dynasty does not, and the religious machinery they created is left humming unsupervised. Then we get to Afsharid Iran, 1736 to 1747, when sheer violence is mistaken for stability. Enter Nader Shah, history's answer to the question, what it's not a revolution or a hostile takeover, really. And militarily, Nader Shah, he is terrifyingly competent. He smashes the Ottomans, he humbles the Russians, he invades India, sacks Delhi, and carries off enough treasure, including the Peacock Throne, to briefly eliminate taxation in Iran altogether. For a moment, Persia looks unstoppable. History squints and wonders if this man might actually be another Timur. But here's the problem. Nader Shah has no theory of rule beyond conquest. He doesn't build institutions. He doesn't cultivate loyalty. He governs through fear, extraction, and perpetual campaigning. The army exists to feed itself. The state exists to feed the army. The population exists to be squeezed until it screams. As he ages, Nader becomes paranoid, cruel, and increasingly unhinged, blinding his own son, executing his rivals, terrorizing the countryside into submission. Iran becomes a machine optimized for war and nothing else. And machines like that do not survive the death of the man who holds the next regime, smaller, kinder, and utterly temporary. History, as ever, is not done yet. This brings us to Zand, Iran, 1751 to 1794, the humane interlude that history immediately corrected. After the Afsharid implosion, Iran doesn't so much transition as lie face down for a generation, while regional strongmen squabble over the leftovers. Out of this rubble emerges Karim Khan Zand, a man who, in the long parade of Persian rulers, stands out precisely because he does not behave like a monster. Karim Khan never even calls himself the Shah. He styles himself Vakil al-Ra'aya, advocate of the people, which in Iranian history is roughly equivalent to admitting you're a vegetarian at a barbecue competition. He governs from Shiraz, lowers taxes, curbs corruption, patronizes trade, and largely leaves the population alone to recover from decades of war. And astonishingly, it works. Iran's commerce revives, cultural palace intrigues, and internecine bloodletting. The very restraint that made his rule humane also made it fragile. The lesson is painful but consistent. A gentle ruler without structures is just a pause button. Iran doesn't reject Karim Khan's example, it simply outlives it. And once again, the field is left open for someone who is far less gentle. Which gets us to Qajar, Iran, 794 to 1925, when weakness becomes a system. The Qajars see endurance. Aga Muhammad Khan Qajar, brutal, calculating, famously cruel, reunifies Iran by eliminating rivals one by one, culminating in the sack of Tbilisi and the reassertion of a yard sale. Yet the Qajars persist for over a century precisely because they are too weak to provoke total collapse. They preside rather than rule. They absorb blame while the clerics grow ever stronger as more royal incompetence. This era teaches Iran a deeply corrosive lesson. When the state fails to defend national dignity, religion becomes the last refuge of legitimacy. By the early 20th century, resentment has fermented into something new, not a revolution yet, but a demand for limits, for law, for accountability. The pressure cooker is finally rattling, and in 1905 it blows its lid briefly, gloriously, and tragically. The constitutional revolution in 1905 concessions, clerics alarmed by royal corruption, intellectuals inspired by European constitutionalism, and ordinary citizens
All right. That is a little bit longer than we can stand. We're going to get back to him in but a moment, but I want to remind you that the technical issues are part of the show. Typically, when there's not a huge lag or break or whatever, StreamYard will record it clean. And so, unless it becomes like absurdly excessive, like it did just now, I let him go because, like I said, he can still get a clean recording locally. And so, you know, that's how we do it. Good evening. Welcome to the Blast Radius. As typically I'm introduced, the inimitable co-host, Caucasian Sasquatch. And well, you back, bud? Wave around this stuff.
I don't know. It looks like it's going to be a long night.
It might be a long night, bro. You know where you were at.
I'm going to have to reset. Give me a minute.
Do what you got to do, bro. I'm going to transition to my question for the audience. I want to know. Let's see if I've got it on tap or if I have to go look for it. We'll actually get to a show in a minute here, folks. Like, don't sweat it. We're professionals. It'll happen.
I'm gonna have to restart my machine because I can't see shit, can't hear shit.
Yeah, go do your thing, dude. I'll
be back in.
That was me. 6 months ago, no, a year ago, that was me. I was constantly having to reset everything while he held the show down, and it was happening every other show real bad, and then only once or twice during a decent show. But what can you do? You work with what you got. So has anybody seen the new Fallout episode? Right. I noticed something, and nobody hears what I hear. I don't know if I'm going insane or if I'm on to something, but I swear to God, hold on. No, not companion. Hold up. There's a scene in the new episode where Cooper Howard gets basically saved by Deathclaw. And I want you to listen to this and tell me if you can hear a word in it. Everybody in chat, help me with this right now. Is there a word there at all? I hear a word, but I'm also slightly insane. Back to what we were doing before we were so rudely interrupted. We're going to go over a couple of things tonight, assuming we can get our stuff back together well enough to get all our grits in the same bucket. There is a fantastic movie on Amazon Prime, released I think last week maybe, called The Tank, and it is a call it a period piece from the retreating German perspective in a Tiger tank attempting to escape, or it's like Saving Private Ryan if Private Ryan was a war criminal. Basically. So, what's up, Graham? Good to see you, bud. And then we're going to discuss the Scargiver, the Rebel Moon sequel. I'm sure some of you remember how much we enjoyed Rebel Moon, a literal 2.5 hour epic of slow motion grain farming. And when I was watching the sequel, one of the things that come up between, I was watching it with my wife, and we're sitting there, and like every now and then something happens, we have to pause it and walk the dog or whatever, right? And she's like, they have hover carts, and I was like, yes, ma'am. Like, they have spaceships. I'm like, yes, ma'am. They have laser weapons. I'm like, yes, ma'am. Why don't they have tractors? Why are they pulling these things with things that look like scaly horses? And I'm like, it's communism. I, there's a whole lot of subtext in that movie that I don't think a lot of people get it. Who's 46 Pee-pee? 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 Pee-pee like long stockings Pee-pee? Fun fact, the death claws in the game actually are intelligent and can talk. Well, they are intelligent enough that you can trade an egg for your life. So there's that. But as far as talking, they don't have the vocal cords to pull off things like English. So maybe they have a communication method. Maybe we could learn theirs, but I don't think they could, speak Swahili, right? It's it's not a lack of intelligence. It's an incapability of like anatomy. Lizards after all. Uh, yeah, no, you're on the shorts feed. There's also a other live streams live across YouTube on his and my channels, and you know the whole thing is all run amok. We've taken over everything. It's just the way we roll, dude. I don't know what you expected. Hey, look, buttery smooth, or maybe not. What the fuck? I can see you, but you're not there. Weird. That is super strange. Dude, they did not like you talking about Iran at all. Hold on. They're not going to get me. I brought protection. Hell no. I know a conspiracy theory when I see I can see him backstage. He's not moving real swift, but there's nothing on the screen over here. They're not going to get me. Hell no. I'm not having it. What in the world is going on here? I may have to sing and dance to get out of this. It is a pirate song. I'm going to assume he'll bring himself up when he finally fully loads in, because the aliens got him or something. I don't know. They're not having it tonight. Yep, there he goes. He's gone again. We were actually gonna wax philosophical about these two movies, and I mean, I guess we could go over. Does anybody want to talk about Minnesota? Because I was thinking we could trade Minnesota for Greenland, and the Danes would jump all over that, right? Uh, I think we'd come out ahead, fiscally speaking, and we'd gain access to the Northwest Passage. There we go. Everybody's happy. And if you're not happy, take it up with our complaints department. You'll find them at the Department of the Navy. Don't touch our boats. Yeah, it's not great. So, God, yeah, I don't do well by myself. I typically play off of other people, and it works flawlessly. The twins, Greenland twins. What twins? I mean, they're solid A cup. Oh, that was a great moment to come in.
Whose boobs are we talking about?
Mine. No, I was proposing the concept of trading Minnesota for Greenland.
I guess my vote.
Right? Because then the Danes have to finance that trash.
Oh.
It's good to have you back.
Yeah, who knows how long I'll be here? It looks like it's going to be one of those nights.
Yeah, I'm prepared for it. We can live. So I say we just hop off into the middle of it, and you can record your roundup later, because I doubt StreamYard caught most of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to have to reshoot it afterward anyway, so that's fine.
If you want, we can do a reshoot at the end, assuming everything's stable.
That's not a bad idea. Let's just do that. Yeah.
I'm down with that. All right. So. Do you want the good first or the bad first?
let's do the bad first, since that's the order I
Brussels
took it in.
sprouts or steak? So we're going with the Brussels sprouts. All right. So everybody hopefully remembers our complete debacle with Rebel Moon. I'll be honest, I agree with you 100%. You sent me a text that said something like, it's almost as if he watched our criticism of the previous movie and tried not to do it again and failed. Yeah, that's kind of, I have a similar sort of take. We've got super duper girl boss, right? She is the bestest ever and an absolute killing machine. And I've got a complaint about this whole plan at the end, like, and then what kind of question? But let's stick with the trailer and step through it. On its surface,
Like every fifth word you're saying. I don't know what my problem is over here.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
The movie is beautiful. It is absolutely gorgeous. Every single frame of it is breathtakingly well put together and framed flawlessly from start to finish. The man is an absolute genius when it comes to visual work.
As a music video director, he's fantastic. I'm with you there. Yeah.
So that is the end of the good things I have to say about this film.
I went and quickly read a couple of reviews after I got done watching it, and there was one excerpt I remember where the reviewer said that the dialogue scenes have the same tonal flavor as the non-sexual scenes in a porn movie, and I thought that was a pretty good description.
I know the
That's
worst
pretty-
part, the part that I hate the most, right? All right. The where you get to know the seven samurai. They all tell their little origin story, and you find out.
Oh God, I know. Oh God.
Dude, that is every one of them delivers it as deadpan as a written manga anime.
And I know, and a couple of these actors, the ones that I recognize, we know they're capable of acting better than that. It's like he got them all together and said, just act as god awfully as you possibly can, and that's how we want to shoot this scene. And it's
well,
I'm not even sure how to describe how bad the acting is. How you can get professional actors to all act that badly at the same time? I don't know. I guess that has to be chalked up as some sort of an auspicious achievement, though.
Yes, no, and I think it was intentionally done. If I remember right, and I might be misremembering the movie, but each of these actors' origin scenes was shot alone on a sound stage without the other actual actors being involved. The rest of that was green screen, and they were kind of cut into it, right?
Yeah.
And I believe he intentionally set them up to do a stilted it was overacted and not at the same time. It was odd. Every single one of them did this weird deep introspection moment where they were telling their story but also reliving it at the same time, and you could sort of hear it in the voice, but at the same time it sounded like they were phoning it in.
Yeah, like they're all doing croaky voice, which is kind of a weird thing when everybody's doing croaky voice. You're not supposed to do croaky voice, but everybody is doing croaky voice, and it's like understated overacting. if that's even a coherent description. Like, overact really casually, I guess, is the best way of putting it. And I was just worried we were gonna get through the whole picture without seeing the fucking coal shovelers in the boiler room on the spaceship. And
Mm,
I was like, "Come on, Zach,
okay.
you gotta give me one shot of the coal shovelers." And he finally did. Like midway through the third act, we finally see the
The
boiler
physical
room and
toll.
the
Yeah.
yeah. And of
It's
course they
it's interesting. It's like steampunk, but space. It's wild, bro.
and I
I
go
mean,
back to the
yes,
thing we I go
go
back
ahead.
to the thing we've talked about before where okay, you've got anti-gravity grain carts, and yet you are still harvesting with hand tools. I feel like
Yeah,
if you've
I
got
can
the
explain that.
technology to have an anti-gravity grain cart, then maybe you could have invented a combine. I feel
Sure,
like you would
yes,
have
you could have,
combines a couple hundred years ago.
but they won't let you because the Empire has an iron fist and a tractor could easily become a tank. And so you're not permitted to have tractors. And if you go look at the weapons they're actually using, I'm sorry, I might have overthought this scene a little too much. But if you go look at the weapons they have, there's two types. There's the weapons that are brought by the guys that come with the Seven Samurai, and then there's the weapons they had buried out behind the fucking colony that they go and
Right.
dig up, and those are like old guns, and so there are no new weapons in the colony that aren't brought by the Seven Samurai.
But they've got and yeah, there's that one scene where they all do their little bonsai charge. I guess the guys who were too stupid to have firearms, they're out there like with their pickaxes and their and their shovels charging into the Galactic Space Army. Let's go get them, boys.
And some of them live.
And some of them live.
Dude,
And
there's
that's
this one scene. Hold on, there's this one scene, right? And I think it's the same scene you're talking about. They come running out with the guns on one side, and then as soon as they come out, the guys with the pitchforks and shit come running out on the other side, as if it's a fork maneuver to surround a deployment of Marines. And in my head, I saw one of those Marines look over and see the pitchforks and just go, "Rrr, rrr," and then go back to shooting the people with guns.
yeah. And I
But
understand
that's not the
I
movie.
understand, and I guess this is Zack Snyder's custom now, where he does a sort of a PG-13 rated 2-hour version of the movie that sucks and everybody hates it, and then he does like a 3.5-hour R-rated director's cut that people seem to find far more tolerable. And I guess with both of these movies, he's done that, and I don't think that's a good habit to get into as a director. Maybe just make the 2-hour version good instead of needing to come back a year later with the version that doesn't suck. How about just make the first version good? Because I think every director who's ever made any film can come out with a twice as long version of it that has all the stuff in it that they wanted to have. I mean, what's even the point of that? Can you explain what the
Okay.
point of that is?
Absolutely not. It's none of my departments. But I got one question for you.
Okay.
Date movie. Date
Say
movie?
again? Oh,
Date
date
movie.
movie. Oh God.
I say yes. Exactly because it is so beautiful and the dialogue is so terrible that you'll turn it down and have your own conversation while this gorgeous thing is playing. Because if you mute it,
Yeah.
it's a way better film.
Or it's a movie where you say you want to just make out instead of watching this, yeah, and then mute it, just leave
Exactly.
the visuals on.
Exactly. A great date movie is what I say.
And Zack Snyder gives you plenty of super slow motion, so you know you're going to have a long time to get to the destination you need to get to. So yeah, I'm
or
gonna
cry after.
or cry after.
Right.
I'm gonna sign your memo and say thumbs up, potential date movie.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, like I said, and I said this after the first one. I was like, so here's what happened. And this is my theory, and this is just me throwing toilet paper at the wall, see if it sticks. Right. Zack Snyder was signed for some Disney properties. I don't know what happened with that. It was something that was floating around back a while ago, and then just kind of vanished. Right. Uh, I think while he was mucking around over there in that swamp, he come across a script that he really liked, Rebel Moon. And it was supposed to be or rather, maybe he wanted it to be a Star Wars movie.
Well,
And
I heard
Disney
I
just
heard that
didn't
he
do
that
the
he
whole thing.
actually pitched a Star Wars project to Lucasfilm shortly after George sold it to Disney, and they didn't pick it up. And I guess there are rumors that this attempted franchise was the repurposing of that pitch. I don't know if that's true or not, but I did read it somewhere.
Well, I will give them this much. If you can't make a Star Wars movie, you did just as fucking close as you could get without actually saying it was Star Wars. You quite literally did everything but rolled in a Death Star.
Yeah, and we do have characters fighting each other with red and blue glowing bladed weapons. So take that for what you will.
Exactly.
I feel
Now,
like you're
okay,
doing a
hold on.
Star Wars, Zach.
This guy is my favorite character throughout the entire franchise. He makes zero sense, has no purpose in being there, and I think he's God. Right now, he is in the form of Ceranos, a Slavic Celtic god of basically the general world, the forest, basically, but it's everywhere.
I would love to know how much Anthony Hopkins got paid for that one afternoon of voice work they needed him for. He must have made a killing on that.
He probably did it after tea.
He probably did it after tea. He probably
Right?
doesn't even remember. He probably doesn't even remember doing it. He just cashed the check and forgot about it. That's what I would do if I was him.
He has people for that, dude. They cashed the check.
And he's really leaning into the same voice that he used when he played
Hold on.
Odin in the Thor movies.
This is one of my favorite scenes. All right, I want you to pay attention to these ships. And I want to ask you a question. Why is it that some of these seem to burn perfectly clean and the others seem to don't? Some are smokers and some are clean. Why?
I was wondering that myself. I think he just wanted to have some smoke in the shot. I think he doesn't think about these things very extensively. And
It's
even
delicious.
when the ships are flying in space and they've got big bright glowing flames burning out the back of the engines, there's no flames in space, Zach. I come on now. And I will even forgive, the big sweeping bank turns, because that's
There's the
you do
money
that in
shot.
space movies. It's just one of the things you do. Granted, since Battlestar Galactica actually dealt with that more realistically, it looks stupider ever since then when other filmmakers do the big sweepy bank turns. But that's fine. I will forgive you that. But big, bright, burning ass flames in space, I'm not willing to forgive. I have to draw the line there.
I don't know. Ever since Firefly, I've kind of been forgiving on that one point. I love the concept of the smokers. You remember what the smokers were about? They were what were they called? Reavers that utilized unshielded engines and
Yeah.
sloppy drives. And it's not smoke. That's just a visual representation of the absolute chaff of freaking radiation coming off this thing.
And we've had lots of conversations before about filmmakers making space movies who seem to have not the faintest understanding of how space actually works, and they seem unwilling to learn. I guess the most famous example of that is, as we've talked about dozens of times before, Rian Johnson in The Last Jedi, where they're burning fuel at this rate and we'll catch up with them in no time, because obviously when you're flying through space you have to have your pedal on your foot on the fucking gas pedal the entire time, be burning your engine. That's not how space works, you big round-faced idiotic fool. Come on, man, just work with me a little bit, try to figure out how space works.
The hyperspace.
Never mind the fact I guess it's almost silly outlining all of the problems with having a coal-fired, boiler-powered intergalactic spaceship. But how about number one? You can't have open flames in space, dude. Just ask the crew of Apollo 1 why that's a bad idea. Come on now. I know. I think about this stuff too much. Just
All right,
come
so
on,
here's the
dude.
money shot. This is the money shot. This is the admiral of this particular flotilla of battleships or whatever the hell they are. One dreadnought, whatever that fields. We don't know. It's a dreadnought fielding. Yeah. Um, and he's pissed. He was injured by a chick. They put him in the back of the tank, and he came out all wrapped up like this. And this is the actual money shot of the whole movie. I swear to God.
The big Ed Skrein review. What's your opinion of Ed Skrein?
All right. So he's not your normal actor in any sense of the word. All right, what's the name of that dude that played Sphinx on Gone in 60 Seconds?
Not
He
sure.
reminds me of him. But in the whole movie in Gone in 60 Seconds, this dude never says anything. Right. Now, granted, he's usually eating when they ask him a question, and then they make an assumption and move on with their lives. And he doesn't have to say anything. But at the very end, he reveals that apparently he has a Cambridge education through his accent. And he says some really deep shit before you move on in the movie. And everybody's like, I thought that motherfucker was mute.
I'm not certain exactly why it is, but I find Ed Skrein really uniquely off-putting. There's just something about that dude I can't. There is one performance of his that I kind of find almost tolerable, and that's when he played Dick Best in the Midway movie. I thought he was kind of all right in that, even though he kind of chewed the scenery a little bit too much and leaned a bit hard into the whole, hey, yo, look, yeah, I'm an English actor playing American. I'm from Brooklyn. Yo, look at me. Yeah, my name's Dick Best. I can tolerate a little bit of over, and that's the only, and even I'm criticizing him that much, and that was the only performance of his that I didn't find just completely intolerably terrible. And I don't know if it's his act. I don't know if it's just something inherently about his face that I don't like, or his acting that I don't like. But my God, I just can't stand that son of a bitch. And he's the most prominent actor in this movie, except for what's his name, Jaimin Hansu. God, I hope he got paid well, because that guy's a real actor who can really act. I hope he got a good paycheck out of that.
I actually like this dude. Let me tell you why.
Okay.
I really like actors that don't fall into a particular niche or category that you can't just shoehorn somewhere and leave them there. And while, yes, he does villain with, you love to hate this man. And that's something that can't be an accident. He has to have cultivated that type of a level of hate. There's a lot of people who really don't like him, and it seems to be, like you said, something in his face or something. I don't know. Maybe he just smells funny. But I mean, look at that dude. He
looks like he smells bad.
Well, yeah, yes, I'm sure he does. He straight murdered 30 people walking down a hallway, and that, I mean, I don't care who you are. That's creepy.
I read there were supposed to be 6 movies in this series. Wow.
Really? I thought it was just 3.
Well, I guess they downsized it to 3, and then Netflix said, "Nah, we're not even going to make the 3rd one." Because did you see how bad these first 2 sucked?
Hold on. As I understand it, the 3rd one was almost done with the 2nd one come out, from what I read at the time. That they had not been green lighted for the 3rd movie, but the 3rd movie was filmed during the 1st and 2nd, but it was all filmed as a unit. And so the 3rd movie should be completed somewhere out there in the universe, some part of it at least.
And maybe we'll get an independent release of it 5 years from now. It'll be like the Justice League Snyder cut, another one of those deals. Maybe all the Zack Snyder fans can crowdfund it like they did with the last thing.
Dude, I'll bet go to.
I don't know how you become such a hardcore Zack Snyder fan that you want to send money to help him complete his pictures, but I guess those people exist somehow.
How about Mickey Rourke asking his fans for donations so he could stay in his palatial Hollywood estate?
Oh, that was a fun story too. Yeah. My heart really bleeds for Mickey Rourke.
Yeah, I'm worried about it. What's the best movie Mickey Rourke's been in the past 2 years?
Is The Wrestler more than 10 years old?
I think it would just barely make it in under the line. So yes, I agree. Second best was Spun.
I don't think I've even seen anything else with him in it in the last 10 years.
Dude, all right. So I know you're not real big into the whole
Well, I guess
drug
Iron
counterculture.
Man 2, Iron Man 2 is what, 15 years ago now, so that's not in the
Yeah,
time
that's
frame.
not in stack.
And that was kind of an obnoxious performance anyway. I wouldn't go so far as to say I liked it. Yes, I want my bird. You bring me my bird. I want my bird. I am Russian from Russia.
I can't hate it. If you've ever read any of those comics, that guy is a total fucking asshat. He's better than you. He knows he's better than you, and he's actually choked babies out. Like, he's a product of like the whole Chechenian revolution thing. He's an absolute monster.
And Mickey Rourke actually went and hung out in a Russian prison to research that role. So bully for him.
Dude, I like him as an actor when it comes down to it. And there's another movie he did not long after that called Spun. And in it, he's a meth cook in a hotel in like California somewhere, Arizona or some shit. And some tweaked out dude meets his chick. I think he hits her dog or some shit, and he takes him to the vet, and they end up exchanging numbers or whatever. And then she calls him later for a ride, and then you find out that like this chick is on one, bro. She's spun, and it depicts the weird juxtaposition, or rather, I should say, the weird relationship junkies have with time in a very unique way. And if you've got a few minutes, it's worth a watch if you can sit through it, because it does get a little weird.
I've got one other Mickey Rourke thing that just popped into my head. Did you ever hear the story about the year The Wrestler came out, which I forget what year it was, 2012, 13, something like that. Not important, but the year The Wrestler came out, I guess Mickey Rourke had actually signed a contract with WWE to work a match at WrestleMania against Chris Jericho. And he wanted to go through with it, almost went through with it, but his agent people convinced him right at the last minute not to go through with doing the match, because they thought that would it was during Oscar season, and they thought that would diminish the chance of him being nominated and winning the best actor Oscar for that performance. And he was talked out of doing the match, which I guess he very much wanted to do. And the replacement match that they plugged in, because I guess he canceled the thing pretty late in the game, they instead had Jericho work a handicap match against Jimmy Superfly Snuka, Rowdy Roddy Piper, and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And I don't know if anybody here has ever seen that match before, but I mean, Snuka and Piper, they're in their late 50s. All three of the men are in their late 50s at that point, but they came out and worked just as poorly as you would expect men of that age to work. But Ricky Steamboat comes out and just tears the house down. He looks like 30-year-old Ricky Steamboat. I mean, he can still do all the same shit he used to do. He works so well in that match that WWE actually brings him in for a while and has him on the full-time roster again. And that's kind of a fun story that arises out of a rather stupid and shitty event.
Holy shit happens, but you know why they wouldn't let him do that match, right? Insurance. He's worth so much.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a big part of it. But yeah, and
what up, Jack? Still, man, welcome in, folks. Good to see y'all. Appreciate y'all coming through.
It goes without saying that Ricky Steamboat is a stone cold badass for all time.
Absolutely, and has always been. Absolutely.
Yep.
It's kind of the same thing with Superfly. Absolutely.
Yeah. But Steamboat is better and never killed his girlfriend, so there's that. Allegedly.
That's twice, bro. That's twice. Back to the movie and how much it sucked. The dialogue, every bit of the dialogue in this freaking film is exactly what you expect the next line to be for the plot to progress. At no point does it take left turns. In fact, okay, all right, I'm fixing to spurg the fuck out. They take the grain and they stack it up against the buildings because the ship needs the grain in order to continue going on its adventure across space to go put the tyrannical boot of the Empire down on other farmers elsewhere, right? So they stack the grain against the buildings so that the buildings can't be targeted and they have to do a land invasion. And then they counter the land invasion with a group of farmers with old weapons, a very rare few handful of new weapons, a couple of grenades, and a few claymores, right?
Right.
Let me know. They're in a freaking farm that you couldn't keep a fucking cow out of. Like, they do the classic burying people out in the freaking field, letting them pass by, and then popping up in the middle of the classic. But every bit of this is exactly how you would expect it. And here's the really messed up part about it: it works.
And one other thing I want to mention, since I know we talk a lot about how stupefyingly derivative some of the things in these two movies are, but the song that they play when they're in the little horsey horse village, if I'm Howard Shore, I would file suit for them stealing my song, because it's like a note for note copy of the Rohan theme from Lord of the Rings. It's like, it's so close I can't even identify any difference. It's the freaking Rohan song. I mean, write your own damn song, dude. What are we doing here?
And I mean, here's where everything goes tits up for me. This chick, this Uber Meech over here, right, is an absolute unit. She is the whole reason this fight is taking place. If she fucks off to the mountains, so does the dreadnought. If she gets on one of those damned horsies you were talking about and rides that bitch 50 miles south, that dreadnought goes that way too. Just as soon as they figure out they're not in that village, they fuck right off from there. They're not interested in anything there but the grain. If you get rid of her, the rest of this doesn't ever have to happen. None of it. You can just sell the grain. They'll just freaking buy it. That's what they were there to do in the first place.
Well, as we know, if there's any two things an intergalactic spaceship needs, it's coal and wheat. God damn it.
Well, I can see the wheat, bro. The wheat I can understand. You got to feed 5,000 people, right? So wheat, sure. Would you pirate out a fucking wheat farm on the other side of Ganymede? Maybe. Okay, sure. Why not?
And it's
just
like it's wheat that's not even been threshed or I don't know what the proper term is for when you take the
ground to flour.
Yeah. I mean, we're it's just they've scythed it off the whatever the hell you call a wheat stalk, and then just wrapped it up with some twine, and that's what they're giving their space masters.
But no, that's not. There's a 30-minute slow motion communist propaganda piece about them making coarse flour out of it.
Workers of the galaxy unite.
Exactly, dude. It's fucking, dude. I repeat. I don't want to be completely negative. It is beautiful. There is not a single scene in this movie that's not worth looking at. Just mute it. Just mute the movie. Play it in the background while you're scrumping your wife or whatever, and you'll have it's good, dude.
Yeah,
I would make the same argument for the first one too.
And one often gets the impression with Zack Snyder that he only writes dialogue scenes because he has to, like they're the necessary connective tissue that he has to insert in between his big splash page visual images. I think he views movies as just a series of images, and he puts people saying words in between just because he has to. I think he would have been much happier as a music video director. I think Michael Bay was probably much happier as a music video director before he got the chance to make actual films, which nobody should have given him that chance. He was fine as a music video director. He likes to make stuff blow up. When he's filming actors talking to each other, it's always a disaster. So maybe you just stay in the music video game, is all I'm saying.
The bestest ever. I mean, she's an absolute unit throughout the whole movie.
You don't mess with a strong, powerful woman of color. God damn it!
Especially if she's got short hair, dude. You're screwed.
Especially, yes.
You got no chance. I ever tell you about my Fallout? My first attempt at I made Mary Sue, and it was a strong black independent woman of color with a bowl cut. And dude, like I went through all of Fallout. Man, I might have this game around somewhere. I need to go look for it. But I went through all of Fallout and killed all the white men and let everybody live. Everybody else live. Let me point out, Fallout's racist.
So in other words, it was just like every Hollywood action movie in the 2020s.
Yes, exactly. Anytime a settler would show up, I'd take a good look at them, determine whether they were a white man or not, and execute them if they were. My entire settlement was like weird. It was strange, dude. It was unusual, and I screwed everything up because I set up a freshwater empire, and this made all of the super mutants and everything around stronger because they had clean water. That was a bad decision.
And your POC woman of color protagonist dispatches like a dozen fully grown male assassins in less than 60 seconds, and they all stand there and wait their turn to get killed by her, because that's the way things go in these movies now.
So back to the one scene. All right, so there's several scenes in this film that are well worth seeing just because you'll never see them anywhere else. They basically have a sword and fist fight on a ship that is crashing, and it goes from being this way to this way to this way, and then like this way, and almost back level before it hits. And that scene, the way it's put together, choreographed and orchestrated, I really dug it. Yet again, I'm talking about visuals, not the actual plot. The scene itself is trash. It's so dumb.
Yeah, I don't even know if I could describe the plot, except like I texted you this morning. I said I can pitch meeting this movie in 8 words or less. What did I say? I said Magnificent Seven in space with lightsabers. There's your pitch meeting.
DEI, Magnificent Seven.
Oh yes, diverse Magnificent Seven in space with lightsabers.
And I second that motion. 2 times.
I second that emotion.
All right, so let's transition. Let's palate cleanse. Now we're talking about a good film that you can actually go watch and enjoy. Maybe not a date movie.
Yeah, probably not a date movie. And I don't think we should probably give an advisory that I don't think we can discuss this one very in depth without giving away major spoilers. So if you haven't seen it and you want to see it, maybe duck out of the live stream and come back and finish it later, because
we will. Let's just cover it on face value through the first half of this. You've got a 15-minute segment to do at the end of this, so we've only got 17 minutes to cover here. So
copy that.
We'll keep it tight. We'll avoid the final spoiler, right?
Well, yeah, and there are other fertile grounds for discussion, I think, that the movie brings up, especially just you go ahead and introduce the people to what we're talking about.
Okay, so the name of the movie is The Tank. Much as Das Boot, how you put it earlier. And the best description I can give for the general plot line and the overview is it's like Saving Private Ryan meets Fury, has an angry love child, and they go save a war criminal. That work?
Yeah. And most amazingly of all, it's a German movie, got a theatrical release in Germany last September, and it portrays members of the Waffen-SS as sympathetic characters. And that's a hell of a big social taboo being lifted. That is a hell of a big social taboo that has existed for a long time and is only just now starting to be broken down. I think we've seen a few different productions, German productions, in the last 10 years that have depicted members of the regular German army during the Second World War in a not necessarily unfavorable light. But this is the first time I've ever seen that done with members of the Waffen-SS. But you know what I kept thinking of was that you don't see one single swastika in this entire movie, and I bet that's how they were able to get a German theatrical release. Because if there was one single swastika in that thing in the movie, I don't think that theatrical release in Germany is happening. I was kind of surprised they got away with so many Totenkopfs, but I guess
Mm.
there's a different legal standard for that. But you absolutely, I know you absolutely cannot display swastikas, even except in an educational sense in Germany under any circumstances. And I think that law still exists just as stringently as it has for decades now.
So the plot in general follows as you would. In the opening scene, the tank, the tiger, right, is or is it a leopard? I think it's tiger.
It's a Tiger One, and I believe the German title of the picture is just Tiger.
Right. And it sits on what is probably the bridge in Aachen, if I had to guess, because that would have been the most valuable piece of real estate anywhere near the Rhine. And this bridge falls.
No, they didn't they say it was a bridge over the Dnieper? So they're
Oh,
in Poland,
okay.
Eastern Poland.
Anyway,
Yeah,
so okay, the most valuable piece of real estate in Poland at the moment. Let's just
yeah.
say Patton has his eyes on it. Um, and yet again, this bridge falls. So there is an inevitable conclusion. You know they will not hold this position, and everything opens, and it's a lost cause. They have to retreat. And Homie holds out on the retreat in order to have contact with the enemy before he retreats. For whatever reason, I guess he's given the sappers enough time to finish laying charges or whatever. It never really specifies, but it's unimportant. The important part is they met the enemy. Homie is one of those old school generals with the scar on his face, bro. He's a real one, right? And so he meets with the enemy, retreats, pops smoke, runs away, has a very surreal liminal experience involving what appears to be early stage napalm and a deer that doesn't exist.
And they show them popping a lot of Pervitin throughout the movie, which, as we know, is methamphetamine, and a lot of German
Dude,
tank crews were taking that stuff by the handful every day, and we
in
know that
fact,
that stuff can do some stuff to your powers of perception.
if I'm not mistaken, the very first scene in the movie is him rattling that tin and showing that there's like 30 pills in it and popping one. And then he
Yeah,
gives it the guy driving one. I think that's the opening scene.
yeah.
I'll have to
And
go back and check for sure.
they go back to that device about, I want to say, almost half a dozen times. They show them,
Oh, dude.
and they make a point of being really explicit about that's what they're showing. Pervitin,
Yeah,
methamphetamine. Here it is. I'll pop it up. Take one.
right.
Take two. Take three.
And at no point in time throughout the entire sequence of what appears to be the experience of what, 4 days, 5,
Yeah, that seems about right.
they're full tilt. They're at no point do they stop driving, and they're driving a tank with a max speed of what, 38 miles an hour, 60 miles or 80 miles through several versions of enemy territory. It's a good film. It's well put
I'm gonna look
together.
up the stats on the Tiger One.
It freaking it's one of those that it's well dubbed, and so nobody sounds like a cartoon character. And the dubbing and
Oh, I watched
the
it in German.
America does. Anyway, it's well dubbed, and the translation for subtitles are very close to the dubbing. Like, there's not a whole lot of times where you look at it and go, "Wait a second, I don't think that might have translated right." You know,
Well, I
they-
kind of like to when I get the chance to watch a German film with a film with German audio and English subtitles. It kind of gives me a good chance to brush up on my Sprechenziehung of the Deutsch. So yeah,
I,
I kind of always do it that way when I have the option.
I might have half a dozen words in the Spritz and Z.
Well,
But
German, I mean, as we know, English is a Germanic language since the Anglo-Saxons brought it to England from their homeland, so it stands to read. But the two languages are not as far off from each other as most people tend to think, and you can really tell that when you watch movies that are where the actors are speaking German, but there are English overdubs, because you often can't tell the difference just from the movements of the people's mouths, because so many of the sentence structures are so similar.
What's up, Truth? Welcome in, bro.
In fact, you know what it reminds me of as I say that. Remember when we watched the Madness of King George? I watched, like, I don't know how it was that I wound up watching the first 5 minutes of that picture with the German audio track on instead of the English track. I think maybe just Amazon Prime was trying to mess with my head, but yeah, and everybody's speaking German, and I'm like, why is everybody speaking German? It wasn't George the Third natively born in Britain? Wasn't English they shouldn't still be speaking German at this point, should they? And it's only then that I went and looked and realized that I somehow had the German audio playing instead of the original English audio. But it was, the movements of the actors' mouths are so close that you can't necessarily tell all the time what language they're actually speaking, and that's how, it's pretty obvious at times. Like, and that's one of the times that English is very much a Germanic language, and they share a lot of commonalities with one another, especially in sentence structure. Like I said,
I'm going to jump back into this. I want you to think about what it is these gentlemen were facing. They're given an order to travel, like 120 miles across the front, like parallel to the front. The front doing this number back and forth all the way down it.
And they are going in the general opposite direction that all of their comrades are now going in, because this is post-Stalingrad. So as a general rule, the Germans are now drifting back to the west, and they're telling these guys that you have to go all by yourself with your one little tank and go back to the east and pick up this one high-value target who's stranded behind the lines.
I hear you. One little tank, yes. Okay. But for a tank to use, this is a damn good choice. Of the tanks available to the Waffen at the time, this one would have made that trip. It generally, as a rule, took 5 or 6 Shermans to drop a Tiger. And so, yes, this is possible. As long as they're not taking on direct assault from Shermans or larger recoilless guns, which is an issue by the time you get to this point in the war, right?
Yeah.
And I don't mean Shermans. I'm talking about the Russian equivalent. There's what were
the P-34.
The P-34s, right? Which were basically Shermans. I mean, but it took 5 or 6 to 1 to take out a Tiger, and so this is one of the few vehicles they could possibly have sent across enemy lines like that, and actually have a chance of fucking making it there.
And to answer your question from a few minutes ago, the maximum speed for the Tiger 1 is 28.2 miles per hour.
Right. So you're talking 2 days across 4 days across rough terrain.
Yeah, and it's not like you're traveling at maximum potential speed for really any of that time.
Any at all.
And, you're not even on paved roads. You're going over dirt tracks and through driving on the bottom of rivers, as the case may be.
Yeah, so that's all right. That's one cool thing, and I really want to get into this scene. It's one of my favorite scenes in the movie, and it actually tells. But before we get into the snorkel scene, the mine. There is a scene in this movie where they wander out into an area. The captain looks over and sees a sign and is like, oh shit, stop. There's a mine. They get out and start searching for mines in front of the tracks. I'm not sure why. I would have left and went elsewhere. And I think that's what they ended up doing ultimately. But they go to try to find mines, and they find a mine, but the mine they find is an anti-tank mine, and it has been set in a hole on top of prime grenades.
On top of a grenade.
2 or 3 grenades. There were at least 2 grenades under it. Because that's why they couldn't move the mine. Because he got one, but not the other. And the mine was still holding the other. Anyway, so the youngest member, which I believe was the pilot, the driver of the tank, is the guy who no, the radio operator gets out. He's the one who comes across the mine. They start digging it up. The captain's going through the whole fucking thing, breaking it down, how you do it, and this is the way we handle it. And he's doing a real good job of it. And then kaplink, and everybody freezes. and they back the tank up, and they do an entire microcosm of the rest of this movie writ small on this little spot where
Yeah.
he takes the steps to protect his people and to keep them alive for another 5 minutes. That's it.
And that scene didn't play out the way that I expected it to play out. And that was the first point at which I was really impressed with this film. Because you expect that they're going to have to do some shit, like they're going to have, like, the commander is going to get back in their tank and they're going to say, well, we've got to run over our guy to save the tank and save ourselves. You assume there's no way this scene is going to end without that kid getting blown to shit, but he doesn't. Everybody lives, and he lives in such a way that his commander actually shares the danger with him as
Right.
they are disabling the mine and the grenades and getting back into the tank, and very, very gingerly, very, very carefully reversing their path out of there. And I love how he says to the driver, yeah, just drive backward and stay within our treads. Like
Yeah, try that shit in the tank.
he's supposed to just use his rear view camera to do that? I mean, what the hell, dude?
Yeah, drive straight.
Yeah.
Straight.
Go
Dude,
back
that's
to where we
nightmarish.
came. That's no problem.
And we have no idea how far into this minefield we've come, so you'll know.
And
when
I really liked a lot of the scenes in the interior of the tank, especially
Yes.
because I had forgotten, and it's true that the Tiger I was the first main battle tank in the history of the world that actually had a wheel instead of tank levers, you know, the way that you traditionally drive a tank. And that, I had forgotten all about that, and that was a cool little. I thought the scenes of the interior of the tank were really outstandingly well done, and just about as realistic as you can ever get in a tank movie.
When you drive a tank is derived from a tractor. And the way you drive a tank typically is there are these brakes that stop the wheels, the treads from turning, and you apply brakes to one side or the other to limit the amount of movement on that side. And this is how you actuate the tank.
Which is why you normally drive with
that.
2 levers and not a wheel, because you're not actually turning wheels. You were just stopping one tread or the other tread, and that's how you turn yourself.
Absolutely. And that scene there shows you that the captain is absolutely I don't know what his rank actually is.
Lieutenant.
The lieutenant is absolutely willing to get right down into the nitty-gritty with every single one, even the least of his compatriots. And that means a lot when it comes down to, like, the depiction of an individual's choices. And that was really solid with me, bro. Like, I really dug that scene a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes us really have a lot of respect for the lead character when he shares the danger with the lowliest member of his crew, and that gives a lot of insight into his character that really helps build the gravity of the narrative as the film goes along. And like I said, I didn't expect that scene to play out anything like the way it did play out, and it really impressed me what they did with it. It's the thing that first made me think of that it's a lot like Das Boot. It wasn't even the scene where they are underwater on the bottom of the river. It was the way in which nearly all of the emotional tension in the picture is in those sort of silent, terrified moments when you're expecting something to pop off and kill everyone, and not necessarily through gunshots and explosions and artillery, the way you normally convey that kind of information in a war movie. And I thought that was really brilliantly done, and very, very non-conventional in a good way.
In a good way. Okay, so let's go to the snorkel scene. For those of you who don't know, the original Tiger design involved the ability to drive across the bottom of a river. Now, ostensibly, they would drag out these basically corduroy road bridge things and drop them, and then drive the tanks out on top of them, and it would make something of a non-boggy bottom to drive across. But what these people do in the movie is they utilize its secondary function, which was in the event of an overrun encampment position, a forward operating base or whatnot, whatever tigers available could snorkel up and back into the edge of a river and maybe go unnoticed so that they could then come out and wreak utter havoc on the backfield of the enemy. And a couple of tigers on your flank is significant. One is a lot. You got a
And
couple
and then they have a few little implements that they apply to all the the areas on the tank that can make it not be watertight, that make them watertight. There's a thing you put over the muzzle of the main gun, and there's these little porthole cover looking things that you put over the hatches. And yeah, I didn't even realize that that was an actual capability that the Tiger One had, but I looked it up and it really was. And what a really cool thing to include in the movie, I thought.
And perhaps an underutilized feature given the circumstances of the results.
I mean, yeah, but I'm thinking as soon as they start driving underwater, I'm thinking, wait, don't you need maybe two pipes sticking out? Don't you need one to bring air in and one to vent your exhaust?
Oh,
But
no.
then they very quickly dealt with that problem by turning the engine off. And the driver says, "You're serious right now? You want me to turn the engine off when we're fucking underwater? Are you sure about this, Lieutenant? Are you really,
Here's how that's
really sure about this?"
the snorkel, right? It goes up, and part of that preparatory work that they did, you remember they put the tube in on top that went down to like the engine bay. The
Yeah.
exhaust of that comes up and out right behind the turret, right? And you pop open two panels there, and when you put the tube in, it intersects a cutoff from the normal exhaust exit, and it runs up parallel. That's part of why you get fresh air in the tank, is because the exhaust is hot. And so it draws air in through the carburetor of the tank, as well as the heat and the difference between the heat and the left and right side of the tube. And it goes up and actually breaches just below the level of the snorkel, so that the smoke doesn't disperse quite as far. As it blows straight out onto the water. It looks like there's a seep or something over there. It doesn't look like
What a magnificent triumph of German engineering that is. I mean,
right.
There's a variety of reasons why the Germans lost the war, but being bad engineers wasn't one of them, because they can out engineer anybody on the face of the earth, man. Straight up.
So I had someone ask me one time, because there was like 3 or 4 of these tanks that were found in the bottoms of rivers all across Poland and shit. It's been famous on YouTube several times. They've gone viral. And somebody asked me one time, why are they finding so many of these tanks like in ponds and shit? That's because they were amphibious, dude. Like whoever it was that was the captain of that tank, they drove that sucker in there and probably couldn't crank it up to leave after the Allies passed, and had to pop the top on it, which flooded the tank. They swam out, probably. I don't know of any that were found with bodies inside them, but almost all of them appeared to have been prepared for a snorkeling.
And also, as we know, they tried to make provisions for the Normandy invasion to make Sherman tanks and Churchill tanks for the British to be temporarily amphibious to the point where they could be floated onto the beaches, and it wound up being just a disastrous failure. And most of those tanks are still sitting at the bottom of the English Channel today. But yeah, but that's another thing that illustrates the engineering prowess of the Germans compared to their opponents.
Well, that was the difference in philosophy too. The Americans tried to make a tank float, and the Germans said, "Well, tanks don't float. Let's just let it breathe."
Yeah, let's just make it watertight so it can drive on the bottom, and problem solved. And it's probably a superior approach compared to the alternative. Sort
of. All right, you've got about 12 minutes left. You want to try to do your intro again?
Yeah, should I just run this thing again from the top? Yeah, let's just run it from the top.
And action.
Since we're looking pretty stable here, let's just take it from the top again. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where you have my word, the next despotism is going to be way better than the last despotism. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radio. So glad you could join us tonight. And if you have been paying attention to the goings-on in the world over the past 48 hours or so, You may have noticed that the Iranian regime seems to be possibly on the verge of being popularly overthrown, and who knows, it could be a false alarm. We have heard this song on the radio before, after all. In fact, it seems to play at least twice per decade. We think the mullahs and the Ayatollah are about to be toppled, and then they don't quite get toppled, and then we go back and play out the same old tired pantomime for the 10th or the 15th or the 20th time. The one with all of the nuclear testing and the economic sanctions and the bellicose threats against the great Satan. That's us, by the way. But you don't need me to tell you how that song goes. You have heard it so many times by now, it might as well be the bastard love child of Hey Jude and Hotel California. And now goddamn Don Henley is probably going to copyright claim this video, and it wouldn't be the first time. But that's not important now. The important thing is that I had a rough night, and I hate the fucking Eagles, man. Wait, that's not actually the important thing. The important thing is that, as you know, my penchant as an amateur historian, the vineyard in which I tend to do my most useful toiling, is the one where I hold up a lens to some current day event and in my own inimitable way explain to you, the audience, that all events in the present day are, in fact, the culmination of a long series of other events that transpired in years and decades and centuries past. Here in the United States, or America, as some people like to call it, we are celebrating the 250th anniversary of our founding this year, and we've only had two systems of government in all of the intervening years, which includes the Articles of Confederation. Those didn't even survive 10 years because they kind of sucked. But in some parts of the world, and here we swing back around to Iran or Persia, take your pick, most forms of governance never survive a single century. And when one despotism passes away, it is invariably supplanted by a different despotism, which is often worse than the last one. So tonight, ladies and gentlemen, with your kind permission and indulgence, I'd like to frame the current Iranian unrest within the long-term context of the Iran/Persia over the course of the past half a millennium or so, which is to say, climb into the time-traveling DeLorean of your mind and let's go on a guided tour from Safavid Iran to Afsharid Iran to Zand Iran to Qajar Iran to the Constitutional Revolution of 1905 to Pahlavi Iran to the Anglo-Soviet invasion of 1941 to the Islamic Revolution of 1979 and the associated blunders of a certain Georgia peanut farmer who shall, for the moment, remain nameless. Safavid Iran is where we begin, 1501 to 1736. How a state religion invents itself and then becomes its own prisoner. Safavid Iran begins not as a state, but as a cult with an army. 1501, a teenage warlord named Ismail Safavi rides into Tabriz, crowns himself Shah, and announces, with all the subtlety of a hammer striking a skull, that Persia is now officially 12er Shia Islam. Full stop. No appeals, no opt-outs, no refunds. This is not because the population asked for it. They didn't. Persia had been comfortably Sunni for centuries, but Ismail needs something stronger than lineage or bureaucracy to glue together a fractious post-Timurid landscape, and religion fits the bill nicely, especially when it is paired with forced conversions and mass executions. Thus, Shi'ism becomes not just a faith, but a state identity enforced at sword point. And to be fair, it works. For a while, the Safavids succeed in reuniting Iran as a coherent political entity for the first time since antiquity. They centralize authority, they foster Persian art, architecture, and administration. They turn Iran into a recognizable, durable thing again. But here's the catch. Once you fuse religious legitimacy to political authority, you've welded your throne to a theological rail. Every future failure is no longer just bad governance, it is heresy. Every rival isn't merely a pretender, he is an enemy of God. Worse still, the Safavids import Shia clerics from abroad because Iran doesn't have enough of those yet. These clerics slowly build an independent power base. They accumulate land, influence, and moral authority. They become a parallel state inside the state. The Shah may rule by divine favor, but the clergy increasingly claim they are the interpreters of that favor. By the late Safavid period, the dynasty has calcified. Court intrigue replaces competence. The military rots. The clerical class grows assertive. And when Afghan tribesmen sack Isfahan in 1722, the empire collapses not with a bang, but with kind of an embarrassed wheeze. The lesson Safavid Iran teaches, and one Iran will never quite unlearn, is this. If you build legitimacy on sacred ground, you will eventually lose the right to move. The state survives, the dynasty does not, and the religious machinery they created is left humming unsupervised. Afsharid Iran, 1736 to 1747, when sheer violence is mistaken for stability. Enter Nader Shah, history's answer to the question, what if brute force were a form of governance? Nader doesn't inherit Iran so much as reassemble it at gunpoint. Rising from obscurity as a military fixer during the Safavid collapse, he defeats the Afghan invaders, restores nominal Safavid rule, and then promptly removes the Safavids altogether and crowns himself Shah in 1736. It's not a revolution, it's more of a hostile takeover. And militarily, Nader Shah is terrifyingly competent. He smashes the Ottomans, he humbles the Russians, he invades India, sacks Delhi, and carries off enough treasure, including the Peacock Throne, to briefly eliminate taxation in Iran altogether. For a moment, Persia looks unstoppable. History squints and wonders if this man might actually be another Timur. But here's the problem. Nader Shah has no theory of rule beyond conquest. He doesn't build institutions, he doesn't cultivate loyalty, he governs through fear, extraction, and perpetual campaigning. The army exists to feed itself. The state exists to feed the army. The population exists to be squeezed until it screams. As he ages, Nader becomes paranoid, cruel, and increasingly unhinged, blinding his own son, executing rivals, and terrorizing the countryside into submission. Iran becomes a machine optimized for war and nothing else. And machines like that do not survive the death of the man holding the throttle. In 1747, Nader Shah is assassinated by his own officers. The empire disintegrates almost instantly. Provinces secede, warlords emerge, Iran fractures into regional fiefdoms like a dropped plate. The Afsharid lesson is brutally simple. Military genius can conquer a country, but it cannot hold one together. Nader proves that violence is an excellent accelerant and a catastrophic adhesive. When he goes, nothing remains to replace him. No legitimacy, no system, just exhaustion and ruins. And into that vacuum will step the next regime, smaller, kindler, and utterly temporary. History, as ever, is not done yet. Zand Iran, 1751 to 1794, the humane interlude that history immediately corrected. After the Afsharid implosion, Iran doesn't so much transition as lie face down for a generation, while regional strongmen squabble over the leftovers. Out of this rubble emerges Karim Khan Zand, a man who, in the long parade of Persian rulers, stands out precisely because he doesn't behave like a monster. Karim Khan never even calls himself the Shah. He styles himself Vakil al-Ra'aya, advocate of the people, which in Iranian history is roughly equivalent to admitting you're a vegetarian at a barbecue competition. He governs from Shiraz, lowers taxes, curbs corruption, patronizes trade, and largely leaves the population alone to recover from decades of war. And astonishingly, it works. Iran stabilizes, commerce revives, cultural life returns, the state becomes almost tolerable. There is no grand ideological project, no religious crusade, no imperial overreach, just competent, restrained rule, which is, of course, why it cannot last. Karim Khan builds no durable institutions because his system depends almost entirely on his personal authority and good judgment. When he dies in 1779, the Zand state unravels in similar fashion. Succession disputes, palace intrigues, internecine bloodletting. The very restraint that made his rule humane also made it fragile. The lesson is painful but consistent. A gentle ruler without structures is just a pause button. Iran doesn't reject Karim Khan's example, it simply outlives it. And once again, the field is left open for someone far less gentle. Qajar Iran, 1794 to 1925, when weakness becomes a system. The Qajars seize power not by brilliance, but by endurance. Aga Muhammad Khan Qajar, brutal, calculating, famously cruel, reunifies Iran by eliminating rivals one by one, culminating in the sack of Tbilisi and the reassertion of Persian authority over the Caucasus. But unlike Nader Shah, the Qajars understand something crucial. Iran is too exhausted to be whipped into greatness again. Instead of conquest, they specialize in survival through stagnation. The Qajar state is weak by design. The Shah rules, but not too forcefully. Tribal leaders retain their autonomy. The clergy expand their influence. The bureaucracy exists, but barely. And into this carefully maintained dysfunction step two great predators of the 19th century, Russia and Britain. Iran loses territory in humiliating chunks, the Caucasus to Russia, economic sovereignty to British concessions, and financial independence to foreign loan sharks. The Shahs mortgage the country piece by piece in exchange for short-term cash and personal comfort. Tobacco monopolies, rail rights, customs revenue, all sold off like heirlooms at a yard sale. Yet the Qajars persist for over a century precisely because they are too weak to provoke total collapse. They preside rather than rule. They absorb blame while the clerics grow ever stronger as moral counterweights to foreign humiliation and royal incompetence. This era teaches Iran a deeply corrosive lesson. When the state fails to defend national dignity, Religion becomes the last refuge of legitimacy. By the early 20th century, resentment has fermented into something new, not a revolution yet, but a demand for limits, for law, for accountability. The pressure cooker is finally rattling, and in 1905, it blows its lid briefly, gloriously, and tragically. The Constitutional Revolution, 1905 to 1911, when Iran tried law and was punished for it. The Constitutional Revolution of 1905 to 11 is one of those historical episodes that feels almost designed to break your heart. After a century of Qajar weakness, foreign humiliation, and economic pillage, a broad coalition forms that has never quite existed in Iran before. Merchants furious at foreign concession, clerics alarmed by royal corruption, intellectuals inspired by European constitutionalism, and ordinary citizens exhausted by arbitrary rule. What they want is modest, almost quaint by modern standards. A constitution, a parliament, limits on royal power. In other words, rules. In 1906, astonishingly, they get them. Under pressure, Mozaffar ad-Din Shah signs Iran's first constitution and authorizes the Majlis, a representative assembly. Iran briefly becomes a constitutional monarchy. For a moment, it looks like Persia might leapfrog centuries of despotism with ink and resolve. And that, it turns out, is exactly the problem. The Constitution immediately threatens every entrenched interest simultaneously: the Shah, the court, conservative clerics, tribal leaders, and most dangerously of all, foreign powers who prefer their client states pliable and informal. Law is inconvenient. Law creates records. Law limits bribery. Law is very bad for empires. Mozaffar ad-Din obligingly dies, and his successor, Muhammad Ali Shah, decides constitutionalism has gone far enough, especially far enough to be shelled. In 1908, with Russian backing, he orders the bombardment of the Majlis, yes, artillery, against the parliament. Subtlety was not a growth industry at this time. Deputies are arrested, exiled, or executed. The constitution is suspended. Iran erupts into civil war. Constitutionalists fight back. The Shah is eventually deposed in 1909. The Majlis reconvenes. Hope flickers yet again. And then reality shows up with a clipboard. Russia and Britain, alarmed by instability, intervene. Russian troops occupy northern Iran. British interests quietly align with order. The constitutional state, starved of resources and authority, collapses into paralysis. By 1911, the experiment is effectively dead. The lesson Iran learns is devastatingly clear. You can overthrow a tyrant, you can write a constitution, but without force, unity, and sovereignty, paper loses to guns every time. The constitutional revolution doesn't fail because Iranians reject liberty. It fails because liberty requires institutions strong enough to survive enemies, foreign and domestic. The irony is a cruel one. This failure convinces the next generation that only a strong man can save the nation, and that belief clears the runway for the rise of the Pahlavis, men who will restore Iran's power by burying its freedom. Pahlavi Iran, 1925 to 1979. Order is restored, but freedom is not included. If the constitutional revolution taught Iran that law without force is a suggestion, the Pahlavi era teaches the opposite lesson. Force without consent is a ticking clock. Enter Reza Khan, later Reza Shah Pahlavi, a Cossack brigade officer who looks at the wreckage left by the Qajars and draws a brutally simple conclusion. Iran doesn't need a parliament, it needs a boss. In 1925, he deposes the last Qajar Shah and crowns himself. Thus begins the Pahlavi dynasty, built on a philosophy that can be summarized as modernize now, argue later, preferably never. Reza Shah centralizes power, crushes tribal autonomy, builds roads, railways, schools, and a national army. He weakens the clergy, mandates Western dress, bans the veil, and tries to manufacture a secular Iranian nationalism out of pre-Islamic Persian glory and sheer administrative force. And here's the inconvenient part. It works. Iran becomes more coherent, more sovereign, and more modern in a single generation than it had been in centuries. But it also becomes a police state. Political parties are neutered. The Majlis exists largely for show. Opposition is treated as a form of ingratitude. Reza Shah doesn't rule with the constitution. He rules around it. And then World War II happens, and history reminds Iran that sovereignty is not a vibe. In 1941, Britain and the Soviet Union invade, depose Reza Shah, and replace him with his son, Mohammad Reza Shah, a gentler figure with the same underlying problem: modernization without legitimacy. The younger Shah vacillates, stumbles, and briefly flirts with constitutionalism during the Mossadegh period until the 1953 CIA MI6 coup teaches him the wrong lesson entirely. Survival comes from power, secrecy, and foreign backing. From there, the Shah accelerates. The White Revolution expands education, women's rights, and land reform, while Savak expands surveillance, torture, and fear. Iran becomes richer, stronger, and angrier. The fatal contradiction of Pahlavi Iran is this: the state modernizes society faster than society can consent to being modernized. Religion is humiliated, not reconciled. Political participation is promised and then denied. Prosperity is real, but uneven, arrogant, and enforced. By the late 1970s, the Shah commands tanks, jets, and intelligence services, but no longer commands belief. And in Iran, when belief collapses, power does not pass gently. It doesn't pass to liberals. It doesn't pass to constitutionalists. It passes to the only institution the Shah never fully broke, the mosque. And waiting there, patiently sharpening the knives, is the next despotism, one that will define itself entirely by opposition to everything the Pahlavis were. The Islamic Revolution of 1979, when the cure declared war on the patient. The Islamic Revolution does not begin as an Islamist revolution. That is the first and most important thing to understand. It begins as a general revolt. Liberals, Marxists, students, clerics, bazaar merchants, united not by ideology, but by a shared loathing of the Shah's arrogance, repression, and foreign sponsorship. Everyone assumes they'll sort out the details after he is gone. This is a catastrophic miscalculation. Into this chaos steps Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, a man who has spent years in exile refining a political theology that can be summarized as, never again let secular power humiliate the faithful. His doctrine of Velayat al-Fiqh, rule by the Islamic jurist, is not a compromised position. It is a total claim on the state. When the Shah flees in January 1979, the liberals think they have won. The left thinks it's their moment. The clerics quietly lock the doors. What follows is not a transition, it is a purge. Allies become enemies. Revolutionary courts dispense justice at gunpoint. The Constitution is rewritten into a theological straitjacket. The revolution eats its children and then goes looking for dessert. And here enters James Earl Carter of Plains, Georgia, a fairly decent man walking into a historical buzzsaw. Carter believes, sincerely, that restraint, human rights rhetoric, and moral clarity can stabilize the situation. Instead, they convince the new regime that America is weak, confused, and ripe for humiliation. Thus, the U.S. Embassy hostage crisis. Not just a tantrum, but a calculated act to radicalize the revolution and eliminate moderates by tying the regime's legitimacy to permanent confrontation with the West. Which brings us to Operation Eagle Claw. In April 1980, the United States attempts a rescue mission so complex it feels like it was designed by a Pentagon committee that had never spoken to another Pentagon committee. Helicopters, C-130s, desert staging areas, refueling under blackout conditions, all of it in hostile territory with zero margin for error. And that margin is exceeded immediately. Mechanical failures, dust storms, navigation problems, and finally, a catastrophic collision on the desert floor that kills 8 American servicemen without a shot being fired. The mission is aborted. The humiliation is televised. The regime survives, and it hardens. The lesson Iran's new rulers learn is devastatingly clear. Boldness works, cruelty works, and America can be bloodied without consequences. From that moment on, the Islamic Republic defines itself not as a government that governs well, but as a government that resists loudly. The Shah ruled by force and fell because he lacked belief. The Ayatollah rules by belief and has never needed permission. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how one despotism didn't end history. It merely changed costumes. And what will the next Iranian despotism look like? Well, who can say, really? But if history is any sort of guide, it will be, by our enlightened Western standards at least, something decidedly despotic. It won't be any sort of comfy, cozy Westminster-style parliamentary democracy, so let's just disabuse ourselves of that quaint little notion right at the outset, shall we? Otherwise, when we approach these things less pragmatically than is prudent, we have a regrettable tendency to waste massive amounts of blood and treasure on various idiotic fool's errands where political destiny in that part of the world is concerned. If it's an improvement over the last terrible thing, if it's less terrorism adjacent, less nuclear weapons adjacent, How about let's just be happy with that and stop acting like the rest of the world is our own Ivy League political science faculty lounge where noble ideas automatically translate into effective policy? Because, spoiler alert, everybody else in the world does not aspire to be just like us. I know that may come as a shock, especially if you're an interventionist uniparty douchebag, but we'll get through this together. And you know what else we will get through together? The rest of this here program, by golly. And with that in mind, I now dutifully convey you into the welcoming arms of my distinguished colleague, your illustrious co-host, the finest large, furry, cryptozoological hominid you are ever likely to meet. The one and only, your friend and mine, Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.
Tactical nuke incoming!
I am amateur. You can't unmute me, bro. I know. I know you wanted to.
I saw you had yourself muted. I was just trying to help.
I thought I unmuted myself. Okay, y'all have a lovely evening, Cap. Do you want to do the talk out, or are you going to leave it to me?
You do the talk out. I'm out of breath.
I love each and every one of you like a brother and a sister, but if you give me any trouble tonight, I swear I'll run every single one of y'all off this mountain.
This one's for you, buddy. Nice.